for the opportunity. It is a privilege and an honor to make my expertise available to inform current debate about galamsey. And I want to humbly state that I do this with passion, not to spite people, but I have seen the ravages of cancer. I have seen the effect of what this toxicity can do to people. And if you tell me there are families out there who are suffering on account of this, and you will see in the presentation that Samson has done that. So first of all, there are a lot of models about cancer. We've got logistic, regressional models, several models. WHO, EPA, FDA, I'm talking about the US parallels of what we have in Ghana, use this model that I'm going to use to explain the prevalence of this exposure and how it affects all of us. The first one is that there is what we refer to as the single hit model of carcinogenesis. Now, the core principle is that a single molecular hit to a DNA from a genotoxic agent can initiate cancer. Okay, a single exposure to, and I'm using arsenic.
A single molecular hit.
Exactly.
To your DNA.
Yes. Yes. A single one. Now, there's a mathematical model here I would have shown, but it's not projected. I've given it to the producer. So
yes, I'm sure they're working on it. Production, kindly project this quickly for us.
Yes.
Go on. You just go on us.
So exposure, therefore, is directly proportional to the dose with a non-zero threshold. Okay. The second point is that arsenic binds to sulfhydryl groups and substitutes phosphates in the DNA. That's because arsenic and phosphorus have similar properties, chemical properties. So that is where it begins to attack. It induces oxidative stress. For example, some DNA strands can break. There are different forms of that breakages or mutation that can occur. And so when it happens on a gene suppressor, for example, TP53 or KRAS, then it can easily escalate into a permanent mutation. It can easily escalate into a permanent mutation. On account of that, for genotoxins, we prefer not to have any benchmark. We don't have any threshold on account of that. So that is, if a toxicant, a contaminant is a genotoxin, then it is not supposed to have a regulatory threshold. So all attempts, we use what we call as low as possible, as low as practicable, in order to reduce it. That is because a single molecule is likely to induce carcinogenesis. Now, at the population level, a lot of, as for Bangladesh and Taiwan, those countries, this theory or this model has been validated. And so we refer to it as the linear risk because exposure to the toxicant is linear. The more you are exposed to it, the higher the mutagenicity or the incidence of cancer is likely to occur. For the case of arsenic, you have skin, bladder, lungs. There is a continuous risk. And so this model is also referred to as linear non-threshold model. Linear non-threshold model. We have what we refer to as potency factor. All toxicants, especially genotoxic substances, have a potency factor, and values are given to them. So we multiply the potency factor by the exposure exposure level in order to quantify the magnitude of risk according to US, EPA, EFSA, WHO standards. Now, the policy implication is that there should be, as far as possible, a zero exposure. What it means is that every single exposure is likely to escalate the risk that any person is exposed to. Now, we did a study in the Volta region, KGB, and published it, and we had some interesting. I use this as an example because it is supposed from the listening I have done that in the Volta region there is no galamsey.
Right.
So we went to the place and picked up some baby food samples. And Charlie, look at what we are seeing.
In Volta.
Okay, in the Volta region, KGB, we picked, I don't want to mention the brand name so that we will destroy people's business. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to inform the debate. And the argument here is that, look, you may not be in a galamsey zone, but the food supply chain runs throughout the whole country. So if you are in Accra, you source your food from a galamsey area because we don't do intensive agriculture, so to speak.
You refer to KGB in the Uti region?
Yeah, okay. Yes. The food, we have the pockets where galamsey is hotspotted are the very pockets that we have high agricultural productivity. So we have our wholesalers and bulkers going to these rural areas to bring food for those of us in the urban centers to eat. And that is where you are not spared. If you are in Accra, you are in Kumasi, or you are in any urban center, and you are eating and drinking water, you are putting yourself at risk because galamsey goes into the food and then it is brought to the cities for you to eat. So we found quite significant.
Well, already they can't treat our water.
Exactly.
Okay, you go.
When it comes to the water systems, in fact, I have pictures I'm in Winneba. Every single day, senior members, community members are all drinking brown water consistently. Today, yesterday, every day. And you see, the rich people can afford to dig their own wells, get their own, your friends say, solar energy, and do their own process plants in their house. You and I cannot do that. We have one Ghana, and they can afford to buy bottled water, Avian, etc. But we can't afford to do that. And that is what is making me very passionate about this advocacy. Okay. Continuing with that. So we found very significant levels. I wouldn't spend too much time. It has been projected. We saw exposure levels to be very significant. We found health risk levels also to be very significant. For a toxicant that is supposed to be
have no threshold. Are you still talking about the non-galamsey areas, or now you're talking about?
Yeah, I have switched to the slides. Okay. Before I was expatiating on how if you are not in a galamsey zone, you are still at risk.
That's right.
Because you source your food from areas, our food baskets where galamsey is prone. So when the food comes, the crops uptake these toxicants and they stay in it. And the funny thing is that it bioaccumulates in you. The more, every time you are eating, it is the levels of these toxicants are building up in you. So that is the argument. And then for water systems, our processing plants have already failed us. In Winneba, where I work and live, we have never had clean water for only God knows how long. Since last year up to now, we have never had. All the water we drink is brown. And it is exposing children, school children, the next generation. So the argument here I am making is that galamsey, for example, arsenic leaches into rivers, soils, and fish. Now, another thing too associated with that, exposure is multiple. First, we have ingestion. You drink water. you eat contaminated food. Then also you have inhalation.
All right.
When dust that contains these toxic...
That's some 10 minutes and I need you to...
Yes, our breath. It is also responsible for... it's also an exposure route. Then we have derma. This one is particularly important for our youth who are in the river bodies mining galamsey. Their skin is exposed to these toxicants and it can generate a lot of damage for them. So what we are calling for here is that we can see that there is an existential threat on the water that we drink, 2, the food that we eat, and even now the air that we are breathing. Article 31, Clause 9 of the Constitution says that when there is an existential threat to the life of the community, the president is mandated to use the legal tools of a state of emergency to help this. Now, I want to tie this in with the law. Just 1 second. You see, when a community is at risk, the president is supposed to address it. But when the operations of galamsey involve armed operators, and a lot of Operation Hit, Operation Vanguard, all kinds of operations have come and gone. Now, the reason why a state of emergency is invoked, Samson, is that it gives the president the powers to be efficient whilst protecting human rights.
Okay.
But if, for example, this campaign that is being rolled out, very soon you will see human rights infringements will come to the fore. That is because the current operations that has been deployed by the Minister of Interior, it operates under the normal tools of governance that the Constitution has given. So it is easy to trigger a human rights infringement, and when people bring it against you, they will succeed. Yep. So the framers of the Constitution foresaw this. That when, and you see, the state of emergency as defined by Article 31 does not call for the president to call for a nationwide state of emergency. Look at the hotspot areas.
Right. Targeted. Right.
Target them.
Okay. Thank you.
So that, please give me a second. So the advocate, what we are calling for is that a state of emergency will give the president reprieve, the legal environment for the president to, first of all, halt the activities of these armed racketeers.
Right. Okay.
Then recovery, livelihood interventions can effectively be deployed.
All right.
I am happy about the fact that...
Thank you, Dr. Anyimah-Ackah, food science and technology